check in with Monty and Amy and see how you're doing. How was your weekend? Happy New Year.
Happy
Happy
New
New
Year.
Year. We're dealing with the pandemic. There's nothing but pandas at our house, and we don't understand where they're all coming from.
We had a very nice transition from last year into this year with some friends and made it kind of easy. We don't go overboard for holiday stuff.
No, we're our new motto around here is save the pee-pee pads. We're keeping Zane going as long as he wants to eat and walk and do all kinds of
Take it
amazing
day by
things.
day, but he is a miracle cat.
He's a miracle cat.
He
So
surprises us. He walked further yesterday around the house and the whole yard than he has in months.
yeah, so it's pretty amazing.
I don't know, the miracle. I believe in miracles. And we're going to be talking about a very important subject today, which is minding your own energy. I love that our guest, Michelle Welch. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
You coined that phrase, right? And it's like so relevant and important and something that we all have to kind of keep in mind. So tell us, because I know some of this is from your book, The Magic of Connection.
Right. Thank you so much, first of all, you guys, for having me back. It's great to see everyone and everybody on here again. I see a lot of friends and new friends, and I hope everybody had safe holidays. So my book, The Magic of Connection, I feel like is a very important book right now, seriously, for all of us, because I do believe that it's time for us to start looking at our own energy first instead of going outward. And this is something that Monty and Amy have been talking about for years. It's in Monty's book, Quantum Affirmations. It's not a new concept by any means, but it's something that I present in a little different way in The Magic of Connection. And I talk about minding your own energy or managing your own energy and how to do that before you all of a sudden just start blaming everyone else for your energy. For instance, in my stores, I'll have a lot of people walk in and say, I'm an empath. And that's great. But as an empath, we don't want to stop with just saying, oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't be around that kind of person. I've got to stay by myself. I can't, because we need empaths in the world. We need compassionate, loving, sensitive people in the world. So empaths need to know how to manage and mind their energy so that we can go out and kind of help the world in a way. So that's what the book's about. And so
in other words, you empaths are people that are sensitive, like most of us who are here together today. We pick up on other people's energy more.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's hard to differentiate where yours stops and theirs starts.
Right. So I have in the book a thing where you literally every day, and I'd suggest right now, just everybody do it right now. It takes 2 seconds, really, you can. But as you practice it, just scan your own energy. Just right now, because you're in a group and you're getting the energy of everybody, almost 50 people in this group. That I can see, you're getting everyone's energy, plus anybody that you're around wherever you are. So, and the energy of plants and animals and the building you're in, anything, because it's all energy. So why don't we just scan our energy just right now, physically, what's going on with you? What's yours? Mentally, what's going on with you? What is yours? Emotionally, what's going on with you? What belongs to you? And then spiritually, what's going on with you? And if you do that every single day, or before you go into a meeting, a really important meeting or anything, or before you go into the grocery store, you'll know what is yours. You've done an energy body scan. You'll know what's yours. And then if something else comes at you, you'll know, okay, that's not mine. And I'm going to deal with that. And then we go from there on how to deal with that. And that's really the first step in minding our own energy, is knowing what our energy is.
It's almost like my energy, my choice.
Yeah.
Instead of my body, my choice.
It is.
Jeff, you're somebody who's had huge conferences where you have to maintain your own energy and speak to a lot of different energies. And yet during the pandemic, we we've all been isolated more. So I guess the gift of that could be that we're more aware of who we are individually in our own energy. What do you think?
Well, one of the advantages of speaking in front of 2,000 people at a conference that you're hosting is that you know how you're doing in real time. You don't have to ask because you can feel the room. And you can dynamic. If you, as long as you allow yourself to be presented, the talks I give, at least at the events I host, have been part of, change dynamically based on who's around me. So it's so that I'm at the highest level of being understood. It's why I never really, it's not that I come with prepared speeches. I'm prepared to speak, but I don't necessarily have slides. And I allow the energy of the room to help drive and direct what is shared. I do think one of the, and of course we do have, being on stage is one thing, but you do have, when you're running at a conference, I wear many different hats, and there's a sensitivity of individual speakers who are speaking for the very first time and helping them get over their fear of speaking. The exhibitors, who doesn't matter how many people you have at an event, not enough people are there. You have the people who want to give you the advice on how to make it a better event, what you want to listen to. And at the same time, you want boundaries. I mean, one of the things about minding your own energy is really boundaries, right? And so, I'm surprised when people present themselves at your store, Michelle, and tell you that they're an empath. They're not looking for an award or some sort of medal to verify that they're an empath. Congratulations too. And finding that boundary where we are allowed to actually be present without asking for anything and just be present. And and it's like it's a hard thing, right, to admire or cherish or really appreciate the magic, in my case, of musicians, right? But very humbling experiences being at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremonies, going to the cocktail reception, and being literally 3 feet away from Eric Clapton and not saying a word, because I didn't want to be like everyone else. Well, actually, no one was talking to him, which is the funniest part. But we were all respecting each other's presence. And so I think it takes a lot to like build those boundaries, to mind your own energy while supporting yourself and providing that not to be distant, but just be mindful and respectful. And sometimes it's when those boundaries are crossed, that's where, as a conference host, Amy, that gets to the hard part, is where I need 3 minutes of space because I need to stay collected, and I don't have it. And even if I go disappear in the speaker lounge, I don't have it. So I understand that. So I find other ways to get a quick reset, to get to do grounding. And so that's what I look for, is just a chance to just ground when there's intense pressure or just so much amazing things happening, because you work weeks, if not months, or even a year on something, and then there's the event and you want to be your best. And then you need to know that you have your own little oasis where you could just be zen, reset if you have to, come back out and present. And finding that balance, Michelle, I think is like the most magical thing, and being able to maintain it and be respectful to everyone else who showed up and be respectful to everyone who's there, because yes, but I also need to find a polite way for people to respect my boundaries too.
I think, we're such definite personalities, but we can have tools that help us. Like I'm more introverted than Monty. He's more gregarious, but being married to him for 46 years, I think I've picked up good things from his energy, that helps me navigate in a different way. And maybe you become more aware of your energy to isolate more sometimes.
I was displaying it by not talking. But
you were being present.
I was being present. No, because Michelle's exercise was really good. I mean, I'm a Leo rising. I'm sort of the astrology representative here. So I'm a Leo rising. So our stage fright for people with Leo prominent in their chart is they get scared when they're not on stage. But there's a part in everybody's chart. I mean, one of the great things about astrology is it shows your strengths and weaknesses, so you can use your strengths.
And your energy.
Right. There is a part of practically everybody's chart that you can go there and you think about that when you have to speak in public, or when you're going into a party, which is like speaking in public, or a meeting, and sort of take refuge. A lot of that could be take refuge in your rising sign. As a Leo rising, you can take refuge in that. If you're a Cancer sun and a Leo rising, Cancers are shy. Leo risings are more bold. So that I'm advising people to get a reading from a qualified astrologer and find the area of your chart that you can get into to help you manage your energy.
Or pitfalls that might trap you sometimes,
Right.
where you question. So a little different thing that's going on a lot these days is the effect of the media on us. And I want to hear, Michelle, some of your remedies for this, because sometimes we find ourselves just, scanning an article and all of a sudden, there's scary stuff in there or things that you question. All of a sudden you start feeling churned up and, your stomach feels weird and you really pick up something that's not yours.
Mm-hmm.
How do we be more objective, in situations like that where we're kind of bombarded with scary stuff day by day?
Right. Great question. I wanted to answer first somebody that said, how do you know somebody's qualified for a reading? Well, Monty Farber qualified for your astrology reading, just so you know. You can start with Monty. If he's busy, he'll tell you that who else to go to. So that's who's qualified. And I'm sure some others on here that are very qualified.
You have to be careful, though, who you get a reading.
Yeah, no, but that's the question.
We got Michelle Marie. She's great.
Yeah, that's what I just said, Michelle Marie. But but you can, always start with Monty Farber for anything astrology. As far as this media, and I wanted to say one thing. My book talks about not cutting people off. Now, what I want to say to everyone, because I really get bothered, and I'd really love to have a deep conversation with anybody who hasn't read the book. Just read the book before you disagree with me, because I take it case by case, because I'm a lawyer. So I make my case for why I say what I say. And pretty much I haven't had anybody really come out and disagree with me on it once they read the book. We're all one. So we really can't ever totally cut someone off. Now, does that mean you have to be best friends or even keep in touch with those people? No, it doesn't. But you're sending through your cord of connection. You can still send love to that person from a distance. So there's a chapter called Forgiveness from a Distance, and you can still just send them on with love. So I just do want to say that that's where my book is a little bit different than all the books out there about empaths that just say, just cut everybody out of your life. So I do want to make that real clear, because my book is very different in that regard. And I do believe in taking energy and turning it into a different form of energy called transmutation. But that's very advanced. So when something comes at us that is we don't like and it doesn't feel good, we can change the form of that energy, because energy doesn't ever go away. It just changes forms. It's just hanging around. So like you guys, and I'm going to answer your question, Amy, but let's think about it. When we sage, okay, so you're saging. You sage and you smudge or whatever. You sage it outside the door. It's just hanging outside the door unless you've changed the form of that energy. Okay, so I say, really think about what you're doing with energy. It's funny that I wrote this book because I am no expert in energy whatsoever or any kind of quantum physics, but that's what it's about. And so it's definitely a channeled book in a lot of ways. As far as social media, I think that turning it off is probably the best thing for those of us who are just totally so sensitive that it affects us to a degree that's not healthy for us. I think just turning it off and taking a break from it is probably the best thing. The step that I just talked about of where you can take that energy that is not so good for you and you can say, okay, I see this ball of energy, and I take it and I look at it, and now I'm going to turn it into something I can use for good, transmutation, which is alchemy. And then I take it and I put it in my solar plexus or in my heart. But that takes a lot of practice. But so if you're not there yet, and a lot of days I'm not there, even though I wrote the book. I mean, Amy, we talk a lot. I'm not there. A lot of days it's like, okay, well, you don't do that. But let me say this, and I say this all the time, if a black tourmaline can absorb, deflect, and transmute negativity, which we tell everyone it can. That's what anybody who knows anything about black tourmaline will say. Then so can we. So anything that comes at us, we can do that, but we're not always in the place to do that because we may not feel great. We may feel down. We may feel sad. We may feel in a place to not do that. So that's why we need to scan ourselves and mind our energy and see where we're at. But it's back to your question. It depends on where we're at.
Yeah.
Some days we should look at social media and some days we should turn it off.
Well, I think also you have to process how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't immediately, vanquish it to get rid of it. Sometimes it's important to why you're sad or why you're disturbed or why you're angry, not to mull it over indefinitely. But, there's such a thing now with blocking people and censoring people and, just immediately, I don't like you, you don't agree with me, we're not on the same page. Or I have my moon in Libra. I like to understand the other side. It doesn't mean I have to take their other side, and fill myself with it. But, there's an understanding. I think we put that into all our books because we like to address other people's points of view because there's so many personalities. And that's key to understand who you are and each of us is and how things affect us and who's compatible. But it doesn't mean that everyone else is bad if they're not like you.
Well, that's what I was thinking because, I put in the book, like when I was writing it, I kind of think of I don't know if y'all think of this, like, it's kind of like there was pre-COVID, then there was COVID, then there was election COVID. Okay. And then there's like, and then there's these stages and I was kind of writing a book during all that. And so then you look at the social media and how it was affected through all those stages and what happened with social media during all those stages. And it's just fascinating to look at it. So I was writing this book during the middle of all that. And one of the things I'd already put it, but I just was like, why do people who are supposedly these really spiritual people, why are they writing things like, I'm going to cut that person out of my life, cut everybody out of my life, cut them out, do this, do that. You are gone. You're dead to me. And all this stuff they're writing. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I get boundaries. This has nothing to do with healthy boundaries. Okay. If somebody has, I volunteered at a battered women's shelter here in Dallas, and I was actually a client there after I had been on the board. So I've been on, I understand that. So I want to make that real clear. But to just say, or just, I'm going to block you and cut you out of my life and all this kind of stuff. Finally, I just said, enough. Let's look at this, because if we build up so many walls and walls and walls, eventually you're going to be behind that wall by yourself. Mm. And if you haven't looked at yourself,
good point. Yeah.
All of a sudden you're behind that wall and you're with you. And if you haven't looked at everything that maybe is you and what issues you have, it might be all of a sudden you realize, I wasn't minding my part of this, my energy on this. Mm. And it's an interesting thing to look at because you've cut everybody out of your life.
Mm. Now, another side of it, though, is, if you take the words minding your own energy, it's almost like minding your own business, because how often is it that you run into someone who's a total stranger and you have a message for them, that there's something you actually wanted. So what happens to me at conferences, of course, when I meet strangers or people whom I forget that I met, perhaps, I occasionally drop a message to them, which they're either ready to receive or not. And then they either process it or, 6 months go by, then boom. And so, minding your own energy is also to be respectful, not to understand that if just because you have a message for someone doesn't mean that they are ready to receive it or even understand the context of what's being shared. And, but that doesn't necessarily stop some people from wanting to be sharing of that information. I will mention this part of our Ask the Oracle show, which is live on Mondays, 12 Eastern, is also now available on Spotify. And if you're listening to the Spotify replay of this show, you can join our show live by going to pulver.com and joining us 12 o'clock weekly on Mondays. That was the only ad I have.
That was a good ad for a good show.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to say something about dysfunctional families, because when you grow up in a dysfunctional family, you come down or into the room and you got to figure out what everyone's doing, and you got to keep your own energy together. So if you come from a dysfunctional family, it is not an excuse for not being able to mind your own energy. It's usually something that will help you. A lot of times people feel like, oh my God, I should feel this certain way, instead of I feel this certain way. Do you know what I mean?
You mean they should be more spiritual, or
Or
should
not
more
be too
forgiving?
spiritual. Because what Michelle said before is so true. You don't necessarily have to live with everybody. You can love people at a distance. You don't have to be their best friend. You don't have to engage with them at all.
Well, that was a point you were making about forgiveness. I think that is misunderstood. If you forgive a friend who betrayed you, it doesn't mean you have to be involved with them anymore, but you're doing it for yourself, so that you're not holding on to that resentment or that mistrust, or that betrayal. So you're doing it for both of you, really.
Yeah. I also want to thank Dawn Welch for buying Quantum Affirmations. She said that in the chat.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk
Yeah.
about
Everybody should buy that book. Yeah, that Quantum Affirmations is an incredibly good book. It made a big difference in my life. I'd say everybody should buy that book.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
Michelle.
Michelle.
I mean, and it all comes out of how did I change my life? I think any creative person, and there's a lot of them here today, you're listening to your own thoughts because you want to hear what you're doing. You want to hear, like when I'm writing a book, I want to hear what I should be putting down on
and when
on
you
the
say
computer.
here,
I mean, here in your mind's ear, to paraphrase Shakespeare. Do you know what I mean? So people who are creative are listening for that. So that helps you mind your own energy.
Yes.
Because the people that get washed all over the place are people who are like, what do they think of me? What does he think of me? What does she think of me? And meanwhile, the creative person is a lot more centrally focused.
well, I think there are a lot of wellness practices that tie into making all this work. I mean, if you drink to excess, you're not going to be in touch with your own energy or other people's energy. You're just washed and flipped around, just like you were saying. So there's a lot of things that help us ground, like you were saying, Jeff. We have to have these tools, and you offer a lot of them in your book, Michelle.
Yes, you do.
And I love everybody. Michelle is an expert on crystals. And I also think the fact that you have 3 stores helps you feel the pulse of people. And I know the retail that I've done, when I work with my fashions at Bergdorf's, I love feeling what people need and want. And, that's the collective that we're always talking about when sometimes we do collective readings. There is an energy that's going on in general that a lot of us are picking up on.
Yeah. And I think that, it's interesting because most people entering the stores right now, the biggest thing we hear is what I said. I'm new, but I'm really sensitive to all the energies around me. And we try to be gracious and not say, yeah, we hear that from every single person that enters the store. But I mean, right? The people on here that work for Soltopia Carlton, you see, I mean, we try to be gracious and say, yes, you are very special. That you are very unique, but you're not alone in that. There are a lot of people who are very sensitive to energies, and I believe that it's becoming more so. I believe more and more people are becoming very sensitive to energies, but it is not an excuse. And if you want to use the word empath, okay, that's fine. But it is not me being an empath and walking into a room and just assuming, which I write in the book. I used to do this. I would walk in a room, and it's almost like reverse narcissism. I would walk into a room and I'd be like, oh, everybody hates me. Oh, they don't like me. Oh, that girl over there is talking about me. I mean, I would just be very, very self-conscious and very, very, very sensitive. And a lot of that probably really was some of the things that, were kind of family things and stuff. But, to be very polite, don't make yourself obvious, don't tell anybody about your accomplishments. I mean, I was raised that way. Just, that's rude. That's braggadocious. Don't do that. But I was very much would walk into a room and I could feel the room, but I misinterpreted what I was feeling in the room because I kind of thought it was about me, when really, like Serena, I see on here, maybe I'd see Serena in the room. Hi, Serena. And Serena does big events too. And maybe I saw Serena at an event, and maybe she was busy like Jeff, And maybe they're just really busy and they didn't have time to give me the attention I wanted. But yet or they have a headache, but yet I assume it's about me. And a lot of empathic people will do that. And I think that's, again, minding your own energy. Look at yourself and go, okay, maybe I'm being a little selfish. Maybe this is about my energy and not about their energy. Maybe I should send them some energy of love, and maybe they're not feeling so great, instead of just assuming immediately that they're mad at me or something like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of empaths do that, you know.
I had a question. So with the 3 stores that you have, I guess your customers are from multiple generations. Have you learned something about, in the writing of the book of Magic of Connection? Have you learned? Is there anything generational? Is there something about baby boomers that's different than Gen Zs or different than millennials in terms of how energy is seen and perceived and understood?
That's a great question. I think yes. I think the way it's perceived and understood, because I find, because there's a lot of the whatever they're called now, the younger ones, I don't know what they're called now. I mean,
why millennial goes.
What are they into? It's not even millennials, is it? They really understand the energy. They really do, and they're really seeking a way to integrate how to use that energy in their life. But the common denominator in everyone I see, and people can correct me if they see something different, but here, the common denominator I see is that people will start with, well, I'm an empath. And I think that's because it's been out, and I'm not trying to evade your question, Jeff, I hope I answered it, but I think that's the common denominator. I think there's more awareness now, but I think that, and they want to understand the energy, and they want to understand what to do with it. But the difference is that there's been, I'm just going to be blunt, I think there's been too much written about, oh, whoa, me, I'm an empath, and not, oh, wow, I'm an empath, and this is what I can do with it. And this is how I can be strong in being an empath, instead of being, oh, I'm an empath, so I can't go into a crowded situation. There might be a psychic vampire there. Well, I say you can be a transmutation, and this is going to blow people away. Just listen, a transmutation vampire. So that's not bad. That's just taking energy, and it's doing what I said earlier and turning it into a different form. I don't ever believe in sending energy back to somebody bad. Like if they send bad energy to me, I'm not going to send it back at them. I don't believe in that. A lot of people do. I don't. If they're going to send something to me, really, they're sending it. I'm going to go, oh, well, okay, thank you. That's a little thing of energy that I can take for myself. You just gave it to me, and I can use it and turn it into something good. And I'll tell you what, the younger generations get all that. They get energy a lot more than the older.
Well,
the older like me.
I have a follow-up because, I do avoid energy vampires as often as I can, because that's something which can blindside me, and I imagine others. But, growing up in going to high school in the 80s and in the 70s and graduating in 80 and going to college, that we all saw, we're familiar with the play Hair and the Age of Aquarius, but there was no one to actually ask what was the Age of Aquarius. I don't think I ever asked anybody. Amy,
that's our age.
Yeah, but well, it's also I googled it before. Apparently, it goes for 2,100 years.
Yes, the ages are based on what's called the precession of the equinoxes, which is that
You asked the right person.
the first degree of Aries goes, which happens on March 21st around, goes backwards in the zodiac, in the constellations, 1 degree every 72 years. And so that ends up being 2,100 and something years for an age. But if you want to get into Zechariah Sitchin stuff, he said a different god from the planet Nibiru takes over at the different ages. That's how they stopped their war, was to give everybody an age. So perhaps that's why things are going so authoritarian, because maybe one of the authoritarian gods is pulling the strings at the very top. It's funny you mentioned that, because I was going to post about it tonight.
Well, I was just getting at that when I was younger, right? And I was aware of, the age of Aquarius and the music behind hair, and I was familiar with what I possibly could be aware of when I'm 18 years old. There's a lot I was not aware of. And it took many, many, many years for me to actually rethink some of that, or even just read the lyrics, let alone listen to the words. And what I'm curious about is, I don't, the hair was redone as a movie again. But there's some guiding principles, from the Summer of Love in '67, some guiding principles that provide the base for how we represent energy, how we respect energy, and how we create and make energy happen. And so I was just wondering from your perspective, there's, because depending upon how old the customers are, they may have those references, they may not. And so I was just curious from a, just based on your own take, where is that at? Because the vernacular of energy was not something I had in my life when I was growing up. It's something which has come into my world in the last 20 years. I may have represented energy. I may have been empathic for a very long time, but those were not words I knew.
The ones coming in my store, if they don't know it, they're wanting to learn. And it's interesting because we were on the news because it's a big thing about how much this business has gone up, just the percentages. And I think our readings have gone up 150%. And
Wow.
like sales, 400, what is it, Roger, you on here, 460%. And
Wow.
since 2019, it just keeps going. And so, and I'm only saying that to say, not like brag anything again, how I was raised, I'm not bragging. I'm saying that it's a lot of, it is, let me tell you that it is all age ranges, but it is a lot of the younger crowd. And then they'll bring in it's interesting. A lot of them will bring in their parents and bring in their dads, because it used to be not hardly any men coming in the store, sort of getting off the subject, but it was a lot of women that would come in. And now you'll see people bringing in, and Carlton knows about this too, because he helped get those statistics to me, because he works at all three stores. And then, from the statistics, of course, we have through Roger, I get the real statistics, but as far as who's coming into the store, and people are searching for something different. That also, as far as the understanding the energy, they are wanting something different than the traditional places that they go to learn about something spiritual. And so that ties into energy too, I think, because, and maybe if they don't even realize it, they're looking for something spiritual and they don't know where to go. And they're not wanting to go to the traditional places. And I don't want to cut down any traditional places. I'm just saying that seems to be the issue.
Wow.
So I think they understand energy more. And if not, at our stores, they're certainly learning about it, because that's all I talk about. So.
Right. When we just were talking about hair, that was our generation in 67, 68. There's a lot of astrological parallels now that go back to that time, which is very interesting, because that's when we started getting into tarot and astrology and yoga, and all those things were in the air and were in the energy. And we really did, want peace and love, and that was in the air. Well, now we can use a little more of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way around that one. I also think that, the thing that heralded in the pandemic astrologically was Pluto and Saturn conjunct in Capricorn. And then Saturn is there now. Jupiter was there till recently. Now it's in Pisces. And so it's not surprising, because Capricorn's all about business and authority. And I think people want to go to an authority they can trust, because nowadays they move the goalposts every day. I mean, if they played football the way they do with the news about the pandemic or the pandemic, the goalpost would be outside of the stadium in the parking lot by now.
Yeah, so there's a lot of mistrust, even though I'm always amazed how people are going along with things, considering they are individuals and have their own mindsets. So this age of Aquarius is confusing sometimes, because it's like the whole group is going along thinking the same thing or trying the same thing, instead of, real dialogue, real conversation, real innovation, real newness, more ingredients to add. But one thing this reminded me of, the other night we were talking about family stuff with our friends on New Year's Eve, and we remembered our parents didn't talk about stuff.
Anything.
They locked stuff in, and they'd been through the Depression and the World War, and that's a wonderful thing now that we have all these communication tools and feeling that it's okay to say what happened. There's no shame really like there was in those days, if somebody was mentally ill or if somebody was poor, all the things that they had experienced. They were strong in some ways that they didn't complain.
They clenched all the way through World War II and the Depression. And, they kept clenching during the 50s when they had kids, because they didn't want their kids to suffer. But meanwhile, all their kids wanted to do was talk to them and find out what's going
and go
on.
Get high.
Well, right. And, the thing that harkens back to the 70s astrologically is called the Soros cycle, which is how does the shadow of the moon during eclipses fall across the earth? Which countries does it go over? Which parts of the globe does it go over? And the way the eclipses are, it's a 52-year cycle, I think, or 57 years. It goes back to 1967, 68, where the eclipses or the shadows are falling on the earth right now. So that's why we thought this was going to be the summer of love. And, in a lot of ways it is. I mean, look at this conversation we're having here. Everybody here who's listening or talking has done their part to increase the energy level of the world.
Well, this also goes back to what Michelle's saying about people interested in all these subjects in her store. I mean, that's people, spiritual seekers, people wanting to grow, people wanting to share, people wanting to learn new things in a spiritual way. That's a beautiful thing. So the popularity of that sure signals a change in the weather, right?
Right. And I do think that I feel a shift. I feel a shift of people calming down, just calming down and maybe being ready now to listen a little bit more to one another. That's at least my experience. I don't know if y'all feel that. It just feels like people are sort of calming down a little bit. And
well, they were scared. They were really scared, right?
Yeah.
And realizing that maybe we all need one another, and knowing that perhaps that we can listen even when we don't agree. I mean, look, we're not ever people. I had a friend, really good, well, he's been on the show several times. He's one of my really close friends, Jim Barker. And I always want to say Baker, like Tammy Faye Baker. I always joke. Anyway, Jim was talking to me. He goes, I tell everybody in my covenant, I mean, he's a high priest, and I tell him to read your book. He said, there's only a couple things in your book I don't agree with. And I've never asked him, and I go, if there's only a couple things in my book that you don't agree with, that's incredible. Because I'm sure there's a lot of things that people don't agree with. But I always say, if we could just talk, like I say in my classes, look, take what you like, mull over some of the other things, and what you don't agree with, throw it out. Throw it out. It's okay. We're not going to agree on everything. But I can still say, let's meet. I will meet you where you are. And I'm not perfect. There are people that I have major issues with that I have to try to work on. But at least I'm going to try and meet people where they are and listen to what they have to say and learn from them. And I might go, oh, wow, I'm not sure I agree with that. But at least if I'll mull it over and think about it instead of immediately clamping down and saying, I'm going to block you and not like you and cut that off. I think that's where we can at least start having dialogue with people again, just amongst ourselves, and then also in the country. And I hope it begins in this, what I would call, for lack of a better word, the spiritual community, because I've been very disappointed, to be blunt, in what I've seen in the spiritual community. I think it's been pretty sad. Not here. This has been one of the safe havens. Yes. With your show, with Ask the Oracles. It's been probably a one of the few safe havens that I've seen. But across the board, it's been very sad to see some of the things that people have posted and some of the things people have done. And, I think if we'll all hold each other accountable. If you see, I had a judge hold me accountable when I went through my divorce. And if she saw something that I posted that she thought she was a judge, that would try divorce cases and stuff, but not mine. And she said, there was one time she saw a post and I said, oh, that wasn't about my ex. And she goes, well, whatever. People may think it was, take it down. So if we have like an accountability partner that will just tell us that doesn't look good, that's not professional. Why do you want to put that? You might want to think about that. That might be a good idea too.
It's an energy buddy.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. An energy buddy. A mind your energy buddy to help you, to look at what you're, to think about what you're saying and what you're doing. Because I think we should clean up our energy a little bit. And that would be part of minding our energy. But we're never going to agree on everything. Would be super boring. Really.
It so would be boring. Go ahead, Jeff.
If you take a high vibe approach to that, Michelle, I think that you might get closer to it, right? So if you go ahead with rants and negative energy and go low, that's when we're really talking about that. But if we actually shift it, it's sort of like having a conversation when you're not agreeing with somebody and you say yes and to them, and you're putting that confrontational point aside and moving next. If you can find a way that when you're under pressure to go high vibe, not low vibe, you might find to be a lot less confrontational, and you might actually find consensus, and we might actually be able to have a positive way to shift the energy in a way that you get to something constructive, that we don't all have to agree about anything, but we could appreciate each other's presence, and we could agree to disagree politely, and then find commonality to the extent that we're all on this planet together, no matter where we came from. And while we're here, why not make it the best possible place we can be collectively for all of us?
I totally agree. Thank you. Yes, that's well said. That's beautiful. And I totally agree with that.
We have so many friends, who don't believe in astrology necessarily, but, we have other things about them that we love. They're really kind, giving people and smart in certain areas that we love to learn from. I've sold to such a variety of people at Bergdorf Goodman from all over the world that are so different, and they're all people that love my art. So there's a point where you meet somebody, in a beautiful place, and we all have that ability to do that.
I find that people who are not willing to forgive other people usually have not forgiven themselves for something. And I think this is a big issue. It's just like people who won't have compassion for other people do not really have compassion for themselves. They feel still so wounded, but they don't want to admit that they're wounded, weak. People are applying their parents and history and the dark ages
to every situation.
And instead of Be Here Now, the title of that book by Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, whatever you want to call him, there's a lot of truth to that. Because if you're here now and you don't have all the baggage that you brought with you, you're more willing to forgive, and you're not as afraid because you're not applying the lesson of the last thing to this thing instead of looking at it the way it really is right now. Yeah. I don't know what I just said, but I think it's true.
But on top of that, Monty, I think when you're minding your energy, if you could learn to let go of attachments, if you could mindfully let go of things that may be keeping you away from moving forward by breaking those cords energetically because you see it, because that's something where I find some people are afraid, where they will speak everything they want to, but they're not willing to let go.
Well, you're a futurist. You're a futurist. When you look at the future, you can't have anything
past, all attached to it.
Yeah, so your way of thinking is totally futuristic, so you can't allow any of that stuff. That's like throwing dirt on your wedding dress.
Ooh. Let's talk about some actual tools. There's one little trick I have, like when I'm going to a business meeting, maybe with a new company or a new team, I see my heart connected to their heart, and I see beautiful pink light. This is before I go to the meeting, which sets me in a better place, and I know it affects that place. And it's usually so evident, that there is a mutual respect and a mutual like and a good vibe before you go in. What are some of your guys' tools for dealing with situations where you maybe have to feel you have to protect yourself or protect your energy?
I follow what I believe is some of Monty's quantum affirmation concepts, and I visualize the result I want, and I allow myself to get there. And I find that by believing in it and then seeing it happen again, and then knowing that it can happen again, I just have to just focus on the positive. I also learned to be very, very specific. It's funny about making wishes, that if you make a general wish, well, okay, that came true, and it would be nice if that other part also came through that was not necessarily spoken out loud about. So I've gotten to be very specific about wishes and affirmations, and I find, Amy, that when I can visualize something and see it, then I feel much more comfortable. And even if it doesn't happen exactly like that, I'm best prepared for the moment because I'm allowing myself to see the moment.
You're making a sacred space.
Yes.
For me, I call that part of the superhero's journey in my book is the empath in training, is where we're always going to probably have to use protection. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, so please don't hear that. But in theory, as a futurist, we don't. Okay, we can control energy, but we just don't always, because we can transmute anything. So, but most of us don't. We haven't been taught that. We haven't gotten there yet. So I'm just telling you, we can literally change the form of energy that's coming at us into anything we want. But most of us aren't there yet. If we will go through the book, we can start getting there. You can practice with little things like driving down the road. And like when you get mad at somebody, you can change the form of that energy. But if we're not there yet, and that's, to me, that's the third part where you get to actual transmutation. And I would love it if we could get there, because that is alchemy. That's magic. That's truly the magic of connection. But what I do, like if I'm going into a situation, always do the body scan, like morning and night or any meeting. And so you know it's yours, because that way you absolutely know this is mine and it's not theirs. And then all the different forms of protection, the bubbles of protection, all that kind of stuff. But what works best for me is visualizing the cords going out to me with each person in the room, because I know there are cords and to every single thing in the room. But then I send, my color of light is actually blue light, and I send a blue light of agreement, because that's for the voice, especially when I was practicing law. And I would send this blue light of agreement that we would be able to express ourselves and hear each other in the way that we mean to be heard. Because some of us would just listen to what we want to hear so that we can have our turn to talk next. And we don't truly listen to what the person's saying. So we're not really hearing at all. So that is a really good form of protection, is to just blue light the whole room and the cords of connection between everyone. And if you can think of them being connected to the throat chakra, and then you really, because that's your ears, that's your mouth, that's your nose, that's all this, your neck. And then that's one that's just really, really good for me for protection, because it's protection, but it's also a way of everyone actually not only speaking their truth, but listening.
I love that. I think, I just got the flash during this conversation that people that cancel and block and hate and blame, it's because they lack confidence. And this is feels like it's empowering to them to actually take that action and block and censor. It's for people that are low vibe, right?
Well, people have been wounded, and a lot of people are connected to the wounds of their race or something from the past. The other day on Facebook and Instagram, I wrote something about, it's not going to work if you think of other people as other. And right away, people started, and this happened to my race, and this happened to this. And I'm like, oh, God, that's what, if you're a strategist and you understand how war works, you love it when your enemy is confused and divided. It's just like they're giving you a gift. When people think of other people as, oh my God, you have to apologize to me, you have to do this to me, instead of, oh my God, we're under attack, we got to do something, we all got to hang together or we'll hang separately.
Yes.
That's, you're not going to win if you think of other people as your enemy or as
Dumb or idiot.
stupid or out to get you, or oh my God, that's how Nazi Germany happened. That's how
We're making another.
yeah, that's how all these incredible genocides happen, is thinking of the other people as other instead of we're all human, as less than,
Well, and the fact that we're all one. I mean,
yes, exactly.
I had, it's interesting when I had Hakeem Oluche. He's now on a cooking show. It's like some famous, really popular cooking show, and he was on So What. You guys have been on there. Jeff's been on. Jeff, your show was one of the most viewed shows. So was Monty and Amy's. And Hakeem Oluche, he said he's a quantum mechanics. Is that what it's called? And
Yeah.
And it's so cool to look at how he agrees with like this, all of this coming together, and he talks about it. And so it's so cool to see like the fringe science, kind of quantum physics and all that, and the fringe what we kind of do, right? Coming together and saying, look, we agree on this. We're one. So how are we going to work this out? How can we work as one, even though we're all unique and we bring our unique perspectives? And to me, it's comes so much down to listening to what, and Jeff, you said it best, listening from that high vibe. And I think that's what's going to make a big difference in minding our energy, because when we mind our energy, we have to remember that our energy is part of everyone else's energy on some level, but we start with ourselves and then we go out and out and out and out to other people. And but it takes practice. And that's why I start in the book with just like really simple energy exercises. And then I go up to, the part about transmutation that a lot of people don't want to talk about because they want to get stuck, stay in, I just want to protect. But I'm telling you guys, and even though I know most people don't want to hear it, I'm telling you that we can change energy. We can. And I even asked him, I said, am I right in saying that? And he said, yeah. I mean, energy changes form. So you can manipulate energy. It's just we have to learn how. So, and we never want to manipulate, we want to, the way I'm talking about manipulating energy is when I'm minding my own energy, I don't want to manipulate energy ever to harm someone. I want to just, if something's hanging in the air and it's yucky, why do I send it to the earth? Why am I sending something nasty to the earth for her to transmute it? That's not fair. Why do I send it to the light? Why can't I just decide, okay, I'm going to transmute the energy? And that's what my book talks about. And it is a foreign concept to a lot of people, but I just want to bring it up that is the part of my book that doesn't get talked about a lot, because that is where I go with it.
We're coming up to the last minute of today's show / podcast.
Wow.
That was such a great conversation.
A wonderful conversation. Those of you who are listening to this on the podcast, you missed out on participating in a raffle drawing that kicked off right at the start, right before we hit record. So if you want to be part of future drawings, make sure you join us live on Mondays at 12 o'clock Eastern. Monty and Amy, any closing words on today's show?
No, Debbie, I was just thinking about how you as a ham radio operator at a young age learned about the influence of the planets and the sun, especially because it would interfere with your radio transmissions, right?
Absolutely. And I learned to really love sunspots and learned to love solar energy. It was
Well, there's a lot of energy from those planets.
Yeah, and a lot of energy going on down at Soultopia with the 3 stores in Dallas, Texas. I'm so glad to hear you're on the news.
Oh yeah, we've been working hard. So hard work pays off. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's managing your energy.
That's right.
Michelle, congratulations on everything you're doing with Roger and everything you're going to do. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show today. Special shout out to Lauren for producing and
thank you, Lauren.
Feel better, Harry.
To Harry. Monty and Amy, it's always a pleasure to have you and to co-host the show with you, because if it's Mondays, it's time for
Ask
Ask
the
the Oracle.
Oracles.
And
Next
we'll
week, Michelle Marie's gonna be on.
Yay.
We're gonna be tapping into the trends, the astrological trends and the cultural trends, and I love trends.
Well,
I love
she's,
to see what's coming up.
and she knows astrology and Vedic astrology and
Mhm.
Western astrology and astrology.
we're gonna have to- thank you for
Thanks,
being-
everybody, for joining us.
and we'll be back next time.